The Torah portion this week is extremely relevant to what's going on in Israel right now between Hamas, the Israelis, the whole world. We could learn so much from it. I want to share with you some lessons that I personally took. So it starts with this boy named Joseph that has a dream that his brothers are going to bow down to him and they're going to serve him. And what happens is his brothers get jealous and they take Joseph and they throw him into a well, into a pit. And one of the brothers feels very bad about what happened. He goes back to find him and he finds that Joseph is not there. And it turns out that the narrative switches to Joseph's perspective and he was sold into slavery. In the meantime, the brothers are panicking. They don't know what they're going to tell their father, Isaac, and they're panicking because they know this is going to absolutely destroy him. So they take Joseph's, famous tunic, his famous shirt that his father gave to him, his famous coat, and they dip it in blood, and they go back to their father and they show it to him, and they say, "Look, your child has been killed. Joseph was killed by a pack of wild animals, and we're terribly sorry, but that's what happened." And of course, Isaac was terribly upset and never got over it. And the Torah, the Bible, then goes on to Joseph's point of view. And he gets sold into somebody's house named Potiphar. And in Potiphar's house, Joseph does incredible things. He brings so much blessing to his house that eventually Potiphar gives the keys to everything that he owns to Joseph, except for one thing, except for his wife. That was the only thing that was off limits to Joseph. And day in and day out, Joseph would build his house, and Potiphar's wife, was very interested in Joseph because he was extremely handsome, and she's trying to get him to be with her. And one day, she lies down on the bed and she says, "Come lie down next to me." And Joseph, almost overcome by the whole desire of the whole thing, but remembers right away who he is and who his father is, and he runs out of the house, and Potiphar's wife grabs his shirt, and she starts to scream, and she says to the guards that this man came to me to be with me in an inappropriate way. And of course, Potiphar had to put Joseph in jail, so he goes to jail. And again, the same story happened, that the head of the jail sees that anything that Joseph did, a tremendous amount of blessing came to his hands. So the head of the jail makes Joseph the new head of the jail, and he started to run the jail. And there's these two men in jail, and they both have a dream, and Joseph interprets their dreams. And he ends up interpreting their dreams exactly the way that it ended up happening. And one of the people that had the dream worked for Pharaoh, and Joseph told him on his way out of the jail, "When you see Pharaoh," because he was reinstated to his position, "tell him about me and tell him who I am, so that maybe Joseph could gain his freedom." So a little time passes, and eventually Pharaoh has a bad dream, and nobody was able to interpret Pharaoh's dream. And they remembered that there was this man named Joseph in jail that knew how to interpret dreams, and they came true. So Pharaoh summoned Joseph to come speak with him. And Joseph ends up listening to Pharaoh's dream. And Pharaoh's dream was that there was 7 big, beautiful cows, and there was 7 measly cows. And the 7 measly cows ended up eating the 7 big cows. He has another dream, similar theme. And what Joseph told Pharaoh the dream was about was that there's going to be 7 good years of plenty, and there's going to be 7 years of famine. And Pharaoh looks at him and says, "Okay, big shot. You think that this is going to happen? You run Egypt. You run the show." So Joseph starts gathering and starts working for Pharaoh and starts gathering and amassing huge quantities of food. I mean, we're talking thousands and thousands and thousands of warehouses full of millions and millions of tons of food to save it for that fateful day when the tide changes to the famine. And Pharaoh saw how good he was doing, and he put Joseph in second in command to all of Egypt, to a point where Pharaoh was really just, he was a token leader. Joseph was really the one that was running the show. It says that you weren't able to lift a finger or your foot in Egypt without running it by Joseph first. So the famine's getting worse and worse, and the brothers, Joseph's brothers, they're running out of food where they are, and they knew that the only place to get food at this point was in Egypt. That's where everyone was going to go get food. So the brothers had to go down into Egypt, and they ventured in, and who do you think greets them? None other than Joseph. Joseph can't blow his cover at first because he's running the whole show. So he gives his brothers a little bit of a hard time, and he doesn't give up so easily that he's really Joseph. They didn't recognize him because he was clean shaven, and now he had a beard. And a lot of things happen in between this. But ultimately, Joseph reveals to the brothers, who he really is. And at the moment that he reveals himself, the brothers get so scared. Imagine, you're the brothers that sold your little brother into slavery, and now you finally confront him, and he's no longer your little brother, but he's the emperor of the greatest nation in the world at that time. And normally a person would be revengeful. But Joseph didn't take that approach. Joseph said to them, don't be scared. I'm your brother. And don't think that I came down to Egypt and you sold me into Egypt for no reason. And don't even think that it was you that sold me into Egypt, but it was God himself that orchestrated this entire chain of events so that you should be able to come down into Egypt and bring Isaac down. And I'm going to give you the greatest part of Egypt. There's a land called Goshen. I'm going to give you the greatest part of Egypt, and I'm going to give you as much food and everything that your family needs in order to build a beautiful life here in Egypt. Don't be scared. This all was part of God's plan. And here's the lesson that we take from this, is that in the micro, there's things that happen in our lives. There's things that happen in the world that in the moment when our face is looking at the grindstone and we don't understand because we're looking at it at a very micro level. We don't understand why things are happening, and things are looking really, really bad. I mean, you have to understand, Isaac was depressed. Joseph's father was depressed for 20 years. He couldn't get out of bed. He was so depressed. This is a traumatic experience in the family's life, what happened. And yet, on the micro level, it was a complete travesty. But as soon as you zoom out and you look at things from God's perspective, and when you look at things from a larger perspective, you begin to see that really this was part of God's plan the whole time. Yes, it's painful in the moment. And yes, we want things to go smooth. And yes, we pray that things go smooth. But the lesson that this week's Torah portion, this week's part of the Bible that we learn, is trying to teach us is that if you find yourself, God forbid, in a bad situation, which right now we are, October 7th was an absolute nightmare, still is. The war is absolutely terrible, painful. And on the micro, we just cannot understand it. But there will come a time and there will come a day when we'll see how this exactly was God's plan and how he orchestrated this entire thing and how this will be good. And the eventual good is that this will be, with God's help, the catalyst that will finally bring the Messiah, the Mashiach, and the building of the Beis HaMikdash, the third temple. May we merit to see it in our day. And thank you so much for watching. Thank you for being with me. If you enjoyed this type of content, please leave me a comment that you did so I'll do it more often. Please give me a like. Please follow my page and subscribe. Thank you so much for being here. I love you dearly. God bless. And we should only see good news, revealed good news, quickly in our days. Be well.